This is Warbird Radio.
On this episode of Warbird Radio, we continue our discussion with regards to safety. This is the second episode of our Safety Month discussion, and joining us now is a guy really who needs no introduction. Mr. Thom Richard, one of the best instructors you could get when it comes to recurrent training, T6 checkout, whatever you want to talk about. Thom is the guy. He's a legend in the air race community, and his story about coming to America is phenomenal as well. Thom Richard joins us now from not the ranch, but from out in Oklahoma, where we had to delay recording the show because you had to go secure a tank. Which
Well, first off, I don't know what I'm going to pay for that introduction, but I am actually back at the ranch. I just got
you
back
are?
there yesterday from one of my remote training trips, and hence the tank. We just got caught with our pants down with the rain coming in.
Yeah,
so
it's
we had to
blowing here in Georgia right now. It's coming through, and I think you're not too far.
Nope, same system.
Yeah, why did I not know you had I didn't realize you had a tank. I thought you were out in Oklahoma. You just hanging out with some friends that had a tank. No, you have your own tank.
No. Yeah. This is a big fuel tank. Yeah, 12,000 gallon fuel tank I was working on.
Oh, that's not. It sounded better if we just left that alone and said tank, Thom.
Oh yeah, it's a military tank, right?
Yeah, you live in South Carolina. You can have a tank in South Carolina.
That's true.
Just like you could in Georgia. So, the American Dream SkyRanch, that's your home. It's in 96, South Carolina. Pretty cool. Warbird.adventures.com. A lot of people remember you from down in Kissimmee. Mom and dad and the kids would run off to Disney, and if dad or mom is a pilot, they disappear somewhere in the Magic Kingdom. Nobody knows where they've gone, and they've gone to see you while the kids are in line at a roller coaster.
Right, and then they come back with a permagrin.
Yeah, and now you're doing all of that, recurrent training, checkout, even private pilot, whatever it is, aerobatic, tailwheel, all of that stuff can be done now in the comfort of the American Dream SkyRanch, which I think is our mutual friend Moa Gary's favorite place on earth.
So I've been told. It's definitely my favorite place. I love it.
Matt, I'm going to see Thom this weekend. You should come with me. That's what I always say. I'm going to work on the farm.
Well, he's right, and you should.
I need to get out there. But it's Safety Month. We're not inventing new ways to kill ourselves. Doug Rosendahl pointed that out, and you are the guy to go down and see, because as he said, and he sort of set this up, a lot of these NTSB, these fatal crashes, the report starts off with the word impromptu. Impromptu low-level aerobatics, impromptu anything, gets us into these situations. How do we establish or better establish a culture of safety and just not do these things, in your opinion? How do we do that?
Yeah, well, Doug couldn't be more right. We're not reinventing or inventing any new ways to kill ourselves in airplanes. And unfortunately, in Warbird specifically, we suffer from the loss of control and incapable pilots doing things over their head. And I tell people all the time there are three areas, and realize the T6 is, of course, the single deadliest Warbird we have. And that's not necessarily because of the airplane. It's more for a statistical reason. We have more of them. They do more flying. We process more pilots through them. So they have much more exposure than pretty much all other Warbirds combined. So don't blame the airplane specifically. That said, the airplane is remarkably unforgiving. It's not that the T6 is an inherently difficult airplane to fly. That's not the problem. It's simply that it will not let you get away with bad behavior. You do something wrong, and it's going to slap you right across the face. And that's what pilots need to realize. It is not just another tail dragger that you can just jump in and go. It's going to bite you. And that's also on the other side of the coin, which makes the airplane so fantastic. Once you figure out how to fly the T6, and note, I'm not saying master, but you probably never will, you have done something in aviation, and you'll find out that you will fly everything else you fly. Doesn't matter what it is, J3 Cub to 747. You'll fly everything else you fly better because of the T6. There is not an advanced trainer that compares to the T6. None of the fighters will give you the experience that the T6 does. It's a remarkable airplane, but unfortunately, rather accident prone, and that's mostly pilot induced, doing silly things. as there's probably not an airplane where the little red guy on your shoulder starts talking in your ear faster than the T6. And I think that's a twofold reason. It's usually the first fighter type aircraft that a pilot gets into. So it's exciting. You want to go do things that are fun, right? And you're motivated to maybe do things that you shouldn't be doing, things you would not even consider in your 172. Now you'll go do low-level buzz jobs and low-level aerobatics impromptu, as you just said. And unfortunately, so many times that ends up being a deadly decision. The aircraft, or warbirds on the whole, the entire industry is to some degree based on showing off, right? We have these things, but we like to share them with people.
Now, wait a minute. Are you suggesting that warbird guys have big egos and want to go out and do things in these airplanes that maybe they shouldn't be doing? I'm shocked at hearing this, Thom, that you would even bring this up. But
I'm just going to glaze over and pretend you didn't say that and move on.
Yeah.
So what happens is obviously that you want to show the airplane and your skills and how exciting it is, and exciting to you as well. How to do silly things to show off to the guy in the back seat, or somebody in formation, or a person on the ground, or the worst of all, a crowd on the ground. So just because some pilots fly air shows in warbirds and do all kinds of maneuvers at low altitude doesn't necessarily make it a good idea without training. And that's obviously where I come in.
And let me just back up a little bit, because one of my favorites when it comes to air shows, and I work in the air show business, you work in the air show business, we're around these folks all of the time, is the great Sean D. Tucker, who is one of the folks who has managed to survive a career in the air show world. And he says so eloquently a lot of times that if you crash in front of the crowd, you ruin the illusion for all of those people. And it can even be generational, right? Because those stories continue to be told. And nobody in this business wants to see that happen or have that fall upon their shoulders. Nobody wants that. And so in those moments where you think, I really want this person in the back seat, or, standing down there at the airport to experience this joy of flight and translate that to them, right on that razor's edge is always that catastrophe that could happen if it's not executed properly. And it's never going to be executed properly if it's impromptu.
Yeah, generally not.
That should just be our rule, right? If we just say that and that becomes the rule, then hey, that's the no-go. This is the impossible turn at the end of the runway when the engine fails. I'm just not going to do it, right? I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, and that's actually another thing we practice a lot. But anyway, on the air show side of things, it used to be an exceptionally dangerous spectator sport, air shows, back in the 10s, 20s, 30s. Sure. Because we didn't know enough. They didn't have the experience, and they were showing off, and of course it was exciting. And unfortunately, a large part of the crowd showed up to see if somebody would crash. That was part of the allure at that time. Granted, they flew lower and slower, and right. Purposely crashed at times too. I mean, it was part of the show, right? Yeah. But no, it takes a lot of training to get down into a box, as professional air show pilots do, and it takes years to work your way down to those levels. And it's not something that's done by a pilot that just jumped into an airplane with minimum experience and just start doing whippersnapper. That's not how this works. That said, it's a show business, right? So the purpose of an air show, not purpose perhaps, but the way we go about it is, the idea is to make it look dangerous while making it as safe as physically possible. Air shows is all smoke and mirrors. I have such tremendous margins when I go fly a fighter in an air show. It's not even funny, right? And people watching from the ground most of the time don't realize it, unless they're an experienced hand, obviously. And that's the point. The idea is to make the audience gasp and be excited and look at that. That's the idea. But the idea is never to make it dangerous. That's clearly not it. So, and that takes practice, experience in the field, training, all of those things.
Well, there's a vast amount of self-governance that's happened too with the International Council of Air Shows, where all of the physics have been calculated, the lines that are drawn for the aerobatic box, and all of that goes into making this an incredibly safe spectator event today, where there has not been a spectator who has lost their life in a very, very long time. Now, that's different with air racing versus air shows, and I'm not even going to get into that. They're two completely different animals. But on the air show side of this, because of the discipline of the industry, thankfully today under the professionalism and guidance that has come forth through International Council of Air Shows and other organizations, it's a different world. And what you're talking about with this margin of safety is so true. But that doesn't translate to the T6 guy or gal that takes off at the airport, gives a ride, and comes back and does that low pass and executes that big high G pull at the end of the runway. And something goes south, right? I mean, that's not what we're talking about here. And what we are talking about is having that discipline not to do that in a situation that might get you in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where the more experienced professionals in the industry, especially airshow pilots, need to lead by example. No way, no how will you ever see me break the distance and altitude rules for flybys or aerobatics anywhere. It doesn't happen unless I'm in warbird airspace. It's a very black and white thing to me. You got to lead by example when people are watching. And believe me, people are watching. They are forever paying attention, and anything you do is going to be on video, of course, these days. That's just the way of the time. And I tell people all the time, don't ever say or do anything you don't want to have to explain in front of a judge or your mother.
I love it. That is so true. That is so true. And let's dive into this just a little bit, because there's a difference between flying an infrequently flown approach to landing, like the 360 overhead, which is often the most safe approach you can make in a Warbird, versus showing off. We're not talking about that. If you want to do a 360 overhead arrival in my airplane, I almost exclusively do that in the Chipmunk, because our cylinders load up in an inverted engine. So if you're out on a 3-mile final, following in a 172, you're probably going to foul a plug and run the danger of loading up your engine where it can't go up in a go around. So this is something that goes back to the design elements of the airplane and how pilots flew the airplanes back then. That's not unsafe. That's actually safer, but it's an education question that can sometimes look like you're showing off, where you do a midfield break and you come in and land, right?
So I'm a huge proponent and supporter of staying within gliding distance of areas you can land. And when you operate, I find it remarkable how comfortable pilots are flying single engine, especially high performance airplane, over areas there's no way to perform a safe landing. Can't be done.
Right.
And they don't think of anything of it.
And not every airplane can pull a parachute, right? I mean, so
definitely not.
Right.
So no, the overhead is a great way to go. As a matter of fact, here's something I teach, right? So when I go cross country in a fighter, and the airspace allows for it, I arrive at 250 knots, which is obviously the speed limit, at 2,500 feet right over the airport. That sounds ridiculous, but here's what it gives me. It gives me the opportunity to orbit the airport once or twice and look at the layout of the land. I see if there are fields, if there are cities, forests, lakes, or any other obstacles for when I take off later on from my fuel stop or whatever it is. I know what direction to turn when things go bad. And then I enter the overhead and come on down.
And that's by doing really great. And let me just stop, because there's a big school of thought right now that you look at Google Earth when you get there, or before you even go, to find those spots. Sure. But this makes even more sense, Tom, and I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is real-time data. There's nothing better than making sure that some farmer doesn't have a tractor out in the middle of that field.
For example, right. So but the other thing it gives you is you're within gliding distance of the airport from your cruise altitude of 12.5 or 17.5, whatever it is you're doing, you don't head downhill until you got the airport made, because you're going to arrive there with energy and altitude to spare. Yes, it takes another minute or two, but actually I kind of think it's the most fun part of the trip anyways, screaming around the lower altitude, higher speed, right? So it gives you a sense of security in the airplane, because, well, here's what you got to realize. In a fighter, landing off field is not a landing. It is a crash. No ands or ifs about it. There is no way you're going to put that airplane on the ground with the gear down. That means you're going to belly it in, and you're going to have $1 million worth of damage. So just because you planned poorly and arrived at an airport out of gliding distance, now for some reason, mechanical reason, you don't make the airport, I find that remarkably embarrassing. Why would you do that to yourself? I'm a huge favor of stacking the odds in your favor so you come out smelling like roses if something actually happens, right? It's such a simple thing to do. And we do the same thing on takeoff. When we take off, we do a 360 around the airport. It doesn't matter if it's a Citabria T6 or a P40 or Mustang or whatever it is. The only exception being multi-engine airplanes, right? You don't need to do it. But in anything we have, we do a 360 around the airport before we depart. That way, if you have a problem in your climb, you can always glide back to your point of origin with margin to spare. So easy. It only takes a minute. And here's the other thing about flying Warbirds. I guarantee you there's going to be people watching. They want to see the airplane fly anyway. Give them a 360 over the airport. They love listening to it.
And see, that kind of stuff is the difference between life and death when you're leaving an airport. And you do this arrival, and the idea being you're looking at the airport before you have to make that takeoff. You do this even if you're just transiting the area on a long cross country. This is standard
Absolutely.
Operating procedure.
Yeah. Every single time we teach all our students this, and we require it anytime it's any of our aircraft are flown.
See, that's the kind of stuff that's going to save your life. What do you do in pre-flight? We're looking right now at spring. A lot of these airplanes are coming out of the hangar after long periods of maintenance in a lot of cases. Walk me through that mindset that Thom Richard gets in when you roll the airplane out for the first time to go fly in spring.
Well, so pre-flight's obviously very important, especially after having conducted maintenance. That's really the big one. You want to talk to the people who've been working on an airplane. What did you play with? And what did you change or upgrade or repair? And you got to look over all that stuff. We try really hard in our operation to have others check your work for you after you're done. It doesn't always work that way. It's not 100%, but we try. And it really works because you get distracted and sometimes, for example, you'll forget a car key, and there you go. That's how that works, right?
Now, so let me understand this. You have a regular mechanic, and then you believe in getting someone to come in who also perhaps is has an inspection authorization or is an AMP and look over that work if you can.
We try to double check each other all the time. Yeah, so
that's smart.
There are several of us that are mechanics and IAs, including myself. So that's a big deal. We try to do that on the maintenance side, and when we button the airplanes up, that everything is looked over by somebody else, even though you're 100% sure you did it right. And there's no shame in that. I think it's a really good culture, right? So that's really, really important. We do a very in-depth pre-flight, and I offer this service, obviously, when I go fly customers' airplanes. And usually when I go fly a customer's airplane, I end up with a laundry list, a long list. Usually it's two lists. One is, these are the things we have to deal with before we go fly the airplane. And these are the optional things that would make the airplane nicer. And that's exactly how we approach any inspection, annual, 100-hour, whatever. But we can do that on pre-flight also. And I'll explain to them why those things are important and so on and so forth. It's not infrequent for me to fly to somewhere, go look at an airplane, realize, we're not going to be able to fly it this week. This is what you need to do, and I'll come back when it's fixed. Or I assist them on the spot and fix things. That's really handy being an AMP and an IA to be on the road teaching.
Right. Just take care of it right then. I mean, that's great. Yeah.
And a big problem with the T6 is a common example in that it's not a general aviation airplane. It doesn't have modern manuals. So the old manuals are very, very good. So prime example, the flap system in the T6 has a series of U-joints. It's 2 on each side. And back in the Air Force days, there were numerous accidents where airplanes would roll in on final and kill everybody on board, big explosion. And then everybody stood back and really surprised because these were experienced pilots. Why would this stall spin on final? It doesn't make any sense. It turns out it was a split flap problem. What had happened was the pins in the U-joints would fall out and the flap wouldn't deploy on one side. The airplane would flip over. The aileron is apparently not powerful enough to overpower something like that. So reacting quickly from the pilot's perspective, when you put the flaps down, the thing flips over. It's kind of a hard thing to do, especially at 300 feet or 200 feet, right? So there were a series of accidents like that. So the Air Force came out with a tech order in 1946 to fix this problem. It was a very simple fix. You took some Mil 6000 hose and they slipped over the U-joints, and that prevents the pins from falling out. It's a safety. Here's the problem. It's not an AD. So when a general aviation mechanic receives a T6 in their shop for maintenance, they have no idea about this, whether they're assembling or inspecting, that those are supposed to be there because they don't have access to the tech orders. That's just one of many examples, but it's atypical of you need to have a mechanic that's experienced on the type. And the T6 is obviously one of these things that maintenance is done in various shops throughout the country. And they miss these things all the time. I bet you I have found 12, 15, maybe 20 airplanes over the years that didn't have them.
Yeah. And are you, if you're teaching someone, let's say they buy an airplane, they buy some type of Warbird, they come to you for recurrent training. Do you have a list of go-to folks that you recommend within the family, so to speak?
Yes, absolutely.
That's part of your service, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we do outside maintenance in our shop here, for example. We do annuals on custom airplanes, and we actually have a line of them sitting out here in the outside right now.
With the tank.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But I have guys throughout the East Coast, or a couple of three that I recommend highly. Wayne Patnod, for example, just fantastic guy. Just in Mississippi, just brilliant. Gary Norville down in Florida, of course, nobody better than American Aero. And up on the East Coast, we got Len Boyd, Ocean Air. In Wisconsin, in East Troy, we have Sam Tabor in East Troy. Exceptionally experienced Warbird mechanic. I've sent a lot of guys to him over the years. And another one that I want to mention and give a shout out to is Hangar 743 in Albany, New York. Great little shop. I'd recommend taking your Warbird there. So they do exist, and I would utilize their services before a local FBO if you can. It doesn't always work that way, but I'd highly recommend it.
And with fences going up around airports and the kid at the fence who desires to not only do this, but also to fly, this is going to be something that we really have to deal with. And I love that NWOC, the National Warbird Operator Conference, is really trying to recognize the 40 under 40 and bring in these new folks. There's a young man that lives right down the street from me, Austin, who is working on Warbirds, and he's building his time to become a commercial pilot, and he's already got his ratings, but he's also in the reserves for the Air Force, where he's professionally trained as a mechanic and has worked on airplanes and now helicopters. These are the kind of folks that we want to encourage to get involved in this and really take on that next generation, because just like you said, Thom, it is few and far between when you go looking for maintenance on an airplane.
When we were going air racing, we had a large draw of volunteers because people are excited about racing. They want to help out with that any way, shape, or form. And we recruited tons of people through that medium. As a matter of fact, one of my mechanics came from that. But the Warbird maintenance is fun, and people appreciate it. And the idea is to try to get people in and get their hands dirty with supervision, of course, which can be a task, and not everybody's. Sometimes it costs more effort to show someone something than to go do it yourself, and that's a problem for shops. And I understand if you're trying to make a living. I had my little air museum down in Florida. That worked very, very well for that purpose, trying to get volunteers in and get their hands dirty. And I've had tons of guys over the years get their own piece through our operation, which is pretty cool.
Well, and that's the future of the business, right? I mean, because at some point, it's not just flying. And I've said this so many times to the younger folks. Look, you've got to learn how to work on these things. It's not just the flying. And the top folks in the business, in my opinion, all meet that, whether it's Thom Richard, whether it's Bernie, take your pick. Mm-hmm. Most of you have the ability to work and to fly. And there's so many opportunities out there. In this world of vintage military aviation, there's so many opportunities, and folks don't realize that if you just show up and you're safe about it, there's a lot of opportunities.
There are opportunities, and they're not necessarily easy to find for someone hanging on the outside of the fence. But if you really want to be in this industry, they're there. So you just got to be persistent and show your face.
That's right.
Have some excitement.
All right.
I've always said the most important thing in whether you want to be a pilot or a mechanic is enthusiasm. If it's not there, nothing else is really going to work. So that's it. You got to show up.
We've run out of time to talk about your story. You came from Sweden. You came over here with like, as Rick Peterson, one of my announcer colleagues, would say, Tom came over here with nothing in his pocket but a dream. And here you were, this young guy. You came over. You had this dream, and you have achieved it. You're living the American dream, truly.
What? Yeah. Well, it's a journey, that's for sure.
And you got the girl. I mean, who's a phenomenal instructor.
No question, the finest T6 instructor I've ever had.
And that is a direct quote, I will say, from Steve Tupper, one of her students, by the way.
Oh yeah, all right, very good. Yeah, hey, awesome.
Yeah, who's not an easy man to please. So at all, I said, "Are you flying with Tom?" And he goes, "No, I'm not flying with Tom. I'm flying with Michaela." And I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah. I mean, she is no kidding. She is it." And I said, okay. Yeah. And he came back, and I'm like, how was it? And he goes, I told her I wanted the full experience, the full profile. And he goes, I got it.
That's really great to hear. Yeah, I love that.
It's good stuff going on there at your ranch. And look, as we're talking about safety, as we're finishing up here in the last few minutes of this show, it is a lot of fun, but it is a very dangerous thing to do if you're doing it improperly. And what Tom is ready to take you under his wing. Do you have slots available for this recurrent training that folks need to go and take?
Oh, sure. Yeah. We book out, a month or two ahead normally. So try to get on our schedule a little earlier because it's, especially now, I mean, springtime is always busy for Warbird training, but we'll do our very best to get you done one way, shape, or form. We want you to be safe and leave here my expression I always use is warm and fuzzy. And there shouldn't be any concerns or hesitations or real nervousness about flying these things. That's not the point. The idea is to be competent in them, and that's our job to get you up to speed. Everything's tailored to you and the way you learn, right? You can't give everybody the same treatment because people are different in the way they pick things up. So something we've figured out over the years, obviously.
Yeah.
And by the way, Rick was wrong. I didn't come empty-handed. I had $2,500 with me. My grandfather gave me that.
$2,500. It was a Swedish dream that became an American dream. I love it.
That's no question.
Did you spend it all on airplanes and leather jackets and that leather hat of yours? Is that what you? Because you got to have the look.
There was no budget for a leather jacket at that time. I was homeless, for crying out loud. I spent all my room and board money on flying lessons. So no, but it's I always say, careful what you wish for. It just might happen.
Yeah. Amen to that, Tom. Well, Thom Richard, again, it's warbirdadventures.com. I just want to say, I always make it to where my biannual expires this time of year, where I can, the airplane's coming out, my medical's coming up every 2 years, whatever. So it's this focus on training right now while it's still, I live in the South outside of Atlanta where it's still wet and rainy and you really can't get the airplane out. So this is a great time to look at that. If someone wants to come up there who is not a heavy Warbird pilot, like I've got chipmunks and tiger moth stuff that I fly, you can still go learn with Tom and with his entire team up there. And the best part is they understand the type of aircraft you're flying. more than likely better than anyone else. And so it's just such a great place to go. And it's warbirdadventures.com. What do you recommend for that person coming up for the biannual, whether it's me or someone else who's getting ready to start flying again in this, this upcoming season? Give them the prescription to come and see.
Well, first off, Matt, I'm going to pull the rug out from under you. There is no such thing as a biannual.
The flight review.
Yes, that's right. And it was biennial. That's part of the reason nobody knows how to pronounce it. Or
it's my southern accent coming out. Yeah. My biannual. My biennial.
Yeah. So flight review. Yeah. Since 1995, the biennial's been dropped. Did you know that? That's kind of a funny thing.
See, clearly I've
We're
studied.
all stuck on that. So anyway, we will cater to whatever you're lacking, right? So we will work on anything. For example, if all you ever do is 3-point landings, we're going to go work on wheel landings, or the other way around, right? So we're going to challenge you, make you work. You're going to sweat. There's no question about it. And rarely does it take an hour. It's going to take more than that for most people, and most people tend to come back for more after that, which is also great, And we do it in our airplane, your airplane. We do it in the Citar, we have the Decathlon Swift, excuse me, our T6s, etc. So
you can bring your own airplane.
Sure, absolutely.
I love it. All right, and then you can do it.
It's something that we operate. Mm-hmm.
I get it. Yeah. Not some goofy chipmunk, but show up in your Citar, your Cub, whatever.
So speaking of which, you're a chipmunk owner in Atlanta, and you have not visited.
I know. Tom, it's very busy around here. It's very, very busy. I got to get over there. I got to. Mo and I keep saying we're going to drive the motorhome out there and just come and hang out.
That'd be awesome. I was going to say you can fly up here and do your show because we do have good Wi-Fi, as you can tell.
See. I love it. And it's the American Dream SkyRanch, which, by the way, you can stay at while you're there for your flight training.
Yeah, we have a bed and breakfast for our students or any other aviation friend that wants to fly in or drive in and stay here for however long you want. We got several rooms, so it's a lot of fun. It's a neat place to visit.
And for an extra charge, Tom will read you a bedtime story. It's
there you have it.
There you go. All right, Tom, listen, thanks for coming on and really focusing in on some great stuff for Safety Month. It's great to have you on. And look, I hope you'll be a regular.
My pleasure. I'd be glad to do so.
All right. Thom Richard, everyone, from warbird.adventures.com. You can find him right there again at warbird.adventures.com. And I failed to mention his first show in the Mustang, air show-wise, is going to be Jones Beach. Then he's headed to Quebec for the first show in June with the P-40. He will be down there at Sun and Fun, just attending with a customer's airplane. So no word if it'll actually fly in the show or not. But Thom Richard, one of the best of the best of the best, as our good friend Wayne Boggs likes to say, the air boss. Thom Richard in that rarefied air up there. Go see him, get recurrent, and let's rebuild this safety culture in the Warbird community, one pilot at a time. That's you, that's me. We can do it. Guaranteed. That number 10 that we all look at every single year, and we say, I don't want to be in that 10. Let's not have that 10 be there, those fatal crashes. Starts with you. Starts with me. So all my best. We'll talk to you next month with Strix Aero, a young guy who's doing big, big things in the world of aerospace engineering. Powertrain engineer Corey Miller from Strix Aero joins me. That's next time on Warbird Radio. Like, follow, and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon. So long for now.